Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello, everyone. Tracy here. Welcome back to another episode. I am so thankful to have you joining me for another fantastic conversation. But before we dive right in, a quick word from this week's sponsor. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. I am so excited to have Kelly Dobson back on the show. Kelly, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Tracy.
Good. Like I said, I love our conversations. We were chit-chatting before we got rolling here, talking about the mind, performance, and you know what? Just living our best life as humans and farmers. So why don't we get you to start by introducing yourself? Kelly Dobson,
Sure.
LeaderShift. Talk about you and your company, and then we'll get into our awesome episode we have.
Yeah, so I would guess that most of your audience probably already knows who I am, but for those that don't, so I'm a couple things. So by occupation, I'm a fourth generation farmer from Manitoba, farm just south of Brunet, Manitoba, sort of halfway between that and the U.S. border. Neat part about that is my son has committed to going on to taking the farm on over the next generation. So there's been some shifts that have been starting and continuing to start. But the other thing I do is you're well know, Tracy, I started coaching in the ag space primarily in family enterprise, like basically coaching farmers and a little bit of farm families. And doing that since about 2017 under the banner of LeaderShift. And so we do a bunch of things in that, do a lot of one-on-one coaching directly with farmers about some of the stuff we're going to talk actually more and more about the stuff we're going to talk about today. I also do training. So we run the National Farm Leadership Program, which is evolving and steadily evolving. And maybe we can chat a bit about that today, where we're breaking that program down now into about four different separate programs, segmenting it so it's a lot more accessible. And we're finding that we've just started that last year, and our participation rates have gone up by like 4x. So I do that as another way of development, and yeah, that's been something, like I think we've chatted. Like I've said this multiple times. I started LeaderShift thinking it was going to be one thing, and then in the market and the industry, your clients, your customers tell you what they need, and I find myself evolving what I do and how I do it to meet them. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell, and still going strong. So
nice. So you know what? I want to ask you. We missed our annual conversation last year. Why did you see the need for this type of work for the farming industry? Let's go there before I ask you my other questions. Let's go with the loaded one.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I'll be honest with you, because it actually is really relevant to kind of what we thought what we're going to talk about today. So I was doing board work. So I was on the board of the National Sunflower Association back when it wasn't Manitoba Crop Alliance underneath that. I was on there for 11 years. And I'd held every position in that organization, from everything from director. I was even executive director for 18 months while we were restructuring. And I sort of got that organization going, with the help of a lot of people, not the least of which would have been Darcel Graham. And it was significant enough that actually other organizations started to ask me to come in and do sort of strategic planning or engaging. And so I was just, really excited about, being needed and, helping and doing that. But I started noticing that even though people would say that they wanted, what they wanted and agreed on what they needed to do to get the outcome they wanted, there was an amazing gap between saying something and actually the doing part. And initially, I thought I was like, I've done something wrong. Is there something with the process? Did we not do it right? Did we not get, were we not clear, or is there somebody not? And I started realizing I started seeing it everywhere. started seeing like, why is it that people say they want something and say they want something and do something, and then they don't do it?
Mm.
And so I wanted to get a part, and then I kind of started noticing it was a little bit about myself. Like I started realizing at the same time I was noticing my own leadership topping out because I'd moved on. Like I was still involved with NSAC, and I'd got recruited down in Ottawa to be part of the value chain roundtable around special crops because I had done some successful lobbying in Ottawa, and we'd gotten significant funds in partnership to do a multinational breeding project. So for confection sunflowers, which was that was a $1 million thing that I think Darcel has spun into. I don't even want to know how many millions of dollars that project is involved and done some stuff. And so they saw that, so they asked me to join that table, and then they asked me to chair that table. And so this is now big time. Like this is all French, English translate. It's and then you're invited to the first minister's table, and so you're with the director generals and the deputy minister of agriculture, and it was very. And I noticed the more I kept going, the more my effectiveness was like I wasn't as effective as I would like to have been, and I noticed that other people were more. Like I wasn't keeping pace. And so I thought, I need to do something different. And it was also happening on the farm. Like I was just trying to do all that, and farm at the same time, and not really including employees. And so I blew out an L5 lumbar fifth vertebrae disc in my back, and and I was a lot of injuries, and there was just a lot of things, employee turnover, I was running the end of how that went. So I thought, I need to sort and order this. So I took the opportunity to do a bucket list trip, and I decided, you know what? I was looking for a university for my daughter at the time, and I thought maybe West Coast would be good for her. And I stumbled across a program for leadership, which I thought, like, who in the heck actually goes to school for leadership? As it turns out, so I thought, but the more I got into it, the more interested I was. So I ended up going back to school and took a master's degree in leadership, and found out that I didn't really know what leadership was. And I actually wasn't as good a leader, even though I had all this responsibility. I wasn't actually as good a leader as I thought I was. And so that started the beginning of trying to figure this all out. And so that's over 10 years ago now. And so I have been on this path for a number of years. And then the more I learned, the more I started seeing it all around me. And by that time I had my interests were shifting, that it was mostly not about doing what I wanted, but I was kind of interested I got a lot of satisfaction again, helping people get what they want.
Mm.
And that evolved into outside of organizations and actually got into coaching. And there's a lot of stories in between. Like I've had the benefit of bumping into some like literally world-class thought leaders on leadership, like some that are right here in Canada and some are in North America, who were thought, because I was a farmer from the prairies, I was novel. I was always the novel student in the room, right? Because like, look at this guy, he's a farmer from the prairies, and how neat is that? And so I would just continually getting invited to play, like to join program stuff that I really felt like, man, if they only knew, like I'm probably not good enough to be here, but they seem to think I'm okay. So I just found myself learning and learning and learning, and I've been transferring that learning into how I'm coaching clients. And, it's become to a point now where I'm really understanding at a level, like it's one thing to transfer sort of stuff that works in an executive C-suite level for people who are, who've had, so many organizations, like they have all this personal professional development all through their careers. In family enterprise and small business and agriculture, like they may have been in 4-H, or they may have gone to school for all the technical stuff, but the actual personal development of helping them think about their thinking and how they're processing and how to handle themselves under pressure, like nobody's really training for that. And it's starting to be an issue, like, and it's starting to show up, and it's become this really big thing. So I just felt the more and more I could see it, the more I just felt compelled to engage, and that's sort of what I do. It's what I do most of the time now. So
I love it. And I know as farms get bigger and more complex and the dollars get bigger, right? The debt load, the income level, the pressures that come with that, the economics, we're seeing, increased stress, burnout, and just that mental load on farmers, right? So I could see how this topic would be growing for those of you just listening. I'm kind of doing that upward
Yeah.
growth for farmers because as you were talking, for anybody, whether you're in a career or whether you're farming and whether you're farming or in a corporate career,
Hmm.
what got you here won't get you there. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we just outgrow our knowledge and ability, right? So you work one-on-one and in group settings with farmers, I
Hmm.
do believe. I'm not
Yep.
sure about the one-on-one, but uh,
Yep.
farmer stress, burnout, the mental load. You're the guy I want to ask about this. Are you seeing exactly what I said? Like, are farmers just going like, help? Where do I turn to? Because look at everything out there.
It's an interesting question. So what's out there? I think you've hit the nail on the head. So when I started in 2015, and I remember very clear, I said, I'm going to go, I can't come to Crop Connect and I won't be here for the next 2 years. And they're like, well, what's going on? I said, well, I'm going back to school and the residency is exactly this time. Well, what are you going back to school for? Like, what are you taking? And I told them, I said, I'm going for leadership. And they're what would you do that for? What does that remotely have to do with farming? And what's turned for what was considered baffling and not really on the radar for most people in agriculture 10 years from now. Leadership is commonly, you read any journal, the word leadership in agriculture,
Mm,
people's leadership effectiveness in agriculture, it's become very common, and for good reasons, because you're absolutely right, Tracy. Like, you have to remember, like 10 years ago, like Twitter was just a novel thing that a couple of celebrities were using.
yeah.
Now, like X is actually driving commodity prices,
Mm,
depending on what drops, right? It's actually, like, a tweet drops and it's actually influencing everyday things. In fact, a lot of farmers are using it. It's
yeah.
completely changed, and the complexity around, and also the farm size is also come up dramatic because we've had a really good run of prices. And so when you talk about that, what I saw then when I started coaching, as I saw a lot of farmers in their early to mid 40s who would come either into the National Farm Leadership Program and coach with me directly, and their kind of deal was, I'm living the life I always wanted, but this sucks. Like,
Mm,
this dream is not feeling like the vision, like the dream, like it doesn't feel like a dream. It feels at days like, I don't want to say a nightmare, but this is not fun. And my partner at the time said, it's the heavy wears the crown. Like, I think we all aspire, they want to do it when they get it. It's like, this is not fun at all. And so many would never say the word. So by the way, the word, the taboo word currently in agriculture with farmers, you don't want to say the word anxiety.
mm,
They don't like, no farmer wants to admit that they're anxious. They'll say a lot of different things. They'll say they're spun out. They'll say they're fed up. They're frustrated. Well over a bunch of them don't know what to say. They don't even know what it is that's bothering them. Many of them will come to me with a problem or a challenge, and not realizing that so often now is that when they come to me, they are so stressed and so tired, so burnt out, that they're not in a position and a right mind to even begin to be coached.
mm.
So it took me a while to figure this out. The other thing I want to add before I jump into that, so that 10 years ago, it was farmers in their mid 40s. Today, it is not. I used to be surprised. I'm not surprised now. I have clients coming in that are turning 30 and they're already reporting signs of burnout and acute stress. So they're talking symptomatic. They're hypertensive at 30.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
They're it is just such a dramatic, they're yeah they it, it's
Fortunately,
it
I'm not
it
surprised.
is it's really, it's showing up in a way that, I mean, I thought I was, had pushed life too hard, too far, but some of these farmers are almost a decade ahead of me, and
Wow.
that's not a good thing. Like that, it's actually, it is actually going to impact their lifespan if it doesn't get sorted. So I'm finding that the shift in coaching is going to, well, I mean, if you're hypertensive, consistently at the age of 20 instead of most people have blood pressure issues when you crack 50, right? It starts to be a thing. Well, now we're seeing that, they're at the doctor and they're hypertensive, like they have high blood pressure and they're 29, 30.
Wow.
So as well as other severe, so they all have issues around headaches, dizziness, stomach issues, let's say, or lower, and they think it has something to do with some medical whatever. When it turns out, like physiologically, they're not ill. They have acute chronic stress. It's more common than you might think.
I believe it. Can I just jump in there with two things? What did you say about the crown? Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Heavy,
Is that what you were
heavy,
referring?
heavy, yeah, or heavy wears the crown. So yeah, like
Okay.
heavy is the head that wears the crown. Yes,
Yeah.
I think is the phrase.
And I remember too, and I've been asked to speak to a group of young entrepreneurs, and words are important, right? As you know, words are powerful, and like,
Yeah,
wow, be careful with your words and your influence. And then part of me just wants to say, just hold on, develop yourself. Lots of
yeah,
time. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm a business owner times multiple, but Kelly, and healthy level, balancing it out. But when you're saying that, I mean, that's extreme and unhealthy. But if you look at it, the sheer nature of agriculture and anxiousness, if you look at
mhm,
it, you don't even realize sometimes. I was talking to another
mhm,
guest about being anxious. I think it was a mental health. And I
mhm.
said, I didn't quite realize whatever word we want to apply, if it's anxious, nervous, I don't give it a word,
Stressed out, spun
stressed
out.
out,
Yeah,
you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Especially, I caught your reference about a tweet on X by so and so, is I'm sure what you're referring to with everything going on with tariffs and leaders and the
yep.
chaos. When I was talking to this other guest, I said, I didn't quite realize until I said to Anthony the other day, this was a month ago, I'll be happy when we sell our first group of calves, then I'll feel good. What does that mean? How deeply am I waiting for the other shoe to drop, other
hmm
foot to drop,
I'll
whatever
feel
the
better
saying is?
when.
Yeah, I'll feel
I'll feel
better
better when.
when, right?
Yeah,
So when you're saying that, I mean, and there's scales to it, I'm not minimizing. I
yeah.
mean, there's scales to that level. Yeah, I understand.
I think the way I describe it to a lot and again, and not all clients come to leadership are that, but there are some. But I mean, I'm speaking more broadly. What I see broadly is that agriculture is almost like a boiling frog, in the
Mm,
sense that the farmers are over and over, they're getting into more, and they don't realize, like, it creeps up. Like, I'll speak more of myself. Burnout actually just kind of, for me, like, sneaks up behind me and then tackles me
mm.
down to the ground, and I don't realize it's got me until it's like, oh man, I just am done. I need time. And so, um, it is, for many who come in there, and they, where this is an issue, they're not actually aware that their level of stress is to the point that they're cognitively impaired. And then until they get this sorted, there's going to be no growth. There's going to be no, because the problem they want to tackle is actually, it's usually has something to do with farm transition.
Mm.
So this is usually conversations around probably one of the most impactful and important, generational conversations you're ever going to have.
Yeah.
And they're at a condition of, like, here. So that has to get sorted and has to get, be on a better path until we can even think about our thinking, think about how we might want to approach and how we're showing up and the impact we're having. So it wasn't, I mean, that wasn't what I went, we wasn't trained for that.
Hmm.
That wasn't, it was part, like, people came to you and they were here, and it's like, no, we got to make sure they're here so we can go here. So it's just expanded the demands of what I'm coaching. So yeah, it requires me to know more and recommend, refer out more and stuff like that. So
You
yeah.
know, it doesn't surprise me that you are seeing younger people, and well, it's not great if they're in that position. I actually thought you were going to go another direction. And in my mind, I'm like, of course you're going to see the younger ones because that's a different generation that might be okay with going, yeah, I'm okay with coaching. I get how important the brain is. You and I have chatted about this, and I
Yeah,
think your work is still ahead. Like you're doing amazing work, and I think it's going to
I
explode as the
appreciate that.
years go, right? Because the pressures and farmers and the different age brackets. But we've chatted about this, Kelly. In entrepreneur world, it is cool. It is trendy to be part of peer groups, of entrepreneur groups. And we know in the entrepreneurial world that mindset is key. I've said this to you before, and I think
Hmm.
you don't like this saying. We've had this discussion. I'm going to
Go
say it
ahead.
again, and you can criticize it again. But Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
business is 80% psychology, 20% strategy. To me, that always holds true. In the entrepreneur world, we know the value of that group coaching, but yet you go to farming, I think it's still early, but the businesses that these farmers run, the dollars, the risk
Hmm.
that farmers hold in their hands are greater than most of these entrepreneur startups, but yet it's not as mainstream,
Yeah. So,
right?
and I think that's starting to change. Like, I
Yeah.
think so. So, there's a couple things I can say about that. I think the one is that, I think, and I'll give credit to, I think Maverick Ag was the one that brought it up, was that, I think we just have to start calling it what it is. And if you have a farm of even a modest size in Canada, um, you're in the top 1% of net worth
Yes.
of all Canadians.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to own that and start the conversation from there. And I
Perfect.
mean, I think they have a different perspective, but and
Yeah.
that landed for me in a way.
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you, it's like just to where that's moved. Part of it is, and then how what partnerships are like. So Heather Watson of Farm Management Canada back in maybe February, March of last year, she said, "Hey, there's this competition. Like the federal government has got this producer well-being initiative, which is a competition to come up with real game-changing solutions around well-being in agriculture.
Hmm.
Are you interested?" And I'm like, "No." And then I'm like, then I go, just use my first one. I don't want to do that. And then I'm like thinking about, well, what are we talking about here? And we had different things. And I said, if they want fundamental, like if they want shifting change that's going to make a difference in agriculture, I said, this has to be large. Like I said, it has to change the perception. So with Heather's, strong editing skills, I wrote the initial proposal for for initiative we call Grow Thru It. And we sent it in. We just had our meeting with Ottawa here last week. So they had got over 70 proposals. They threw out about 18. 62 went to the jury, and we were selected as one of the 20 to get to the first round. And so that goes from 20 down to 10 down to 2. And so we were pleased with that. And so Grow Thru It it currently stands as a partnership between LeaderShift and Farm Management Canada that, I think we'll probably definitely be looking for other industry partners to get on board. But it's really, as it stands now, Grow Thru Its mission is to make growing yourself as important and as cool as growing your farm.
Ooh.
And with a focus, and this is my thinking in the last couple of days, is making a focus on a particular segment that so far are what one of my colleagues in the industry said is the movable middle. She's in sales,
Nice.
because what we know is that there's this group, like there's this group that's moving forward and is very adaptable, but then there's this other group that's less so. And so that's kind of where it stands. I'm sorry, Loki, you want to say something? You were going to say something.
Oh, no, no. Sorry. I just said, yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's basically two strategies so far as it's evolved. And I think the first one is really a campaign at various levels that's going to shift the perceptions around personal development and well-being. Because I think you've hit that, like, for one, a lot of people, when they get under it, they see that they're going to put the head down, and they're just going to, resilience, for whatever it meant to them, goes out the door, and it moves to endurance. And that they see that stress is something that they'll get through to the end, which is like, I'll feel better when. I think you brought that up. And I think what we want to do is change the perception that really when we're stressed for any length of time, that's a signal to change. That's a signal to shift. And it's a signal to, for growth. Like we have to start doing something differently to get ahead of this, like, and to understand that like our body's actually giving us really important information. It's just not something to avoid or move away from, but to turn into. And that what we know about that is that this is something that is about development of ourselves, not so much about the business side, although they're very connected. And to overcome some of the beliefs, like a lot of people, when it comes to adult learning and development, a lot of people have some very, I don't want to say outdated, but I mean, I think for a lot of cases, they are some outdated beliefs. Like they really don't think that adults can change and grow. For some people, they have had challenges and they've tried just about everything, and they've tried different things, and they've read books, they've talked to somebody, they've tried different initiatives, and it really hasn't worked for them, or they're doing it. Maybe they're in a peer group, but that peer group doesn't seem to be resolving this general sense. Like they're not getting. I mean, they're getting better, but they don't feel better.
Yeah.
And so, and it's sort of, I would, for lack of better words, the water doesn't come back up every year after the winter. They don't quite get up to where they were, and so they begin to believe that this doesn't work, and that they've tried everything, and that maybe they're just not enough. And it becomes almost like for some, it can be as deep as shame, where it's like, I just don't want to acknowledge that, like I'm drowning here, like my other people they're doing great, but I'm not. And I'm pursuing, but it's coming at a real cost. And I could get into depth that even for people who are not engaging in all these best management practices, there are people who are really successful, but they're doing it out of sheer willpower. So in other words, the way that they have to pace on be out in the outer world versus what it's like to be them on the inside, that gap is big, and that gap creates a tension, and that tension actually shows up as stress, acute stress. So I think it's a pretty big group we're talking about. And I think that there is still, to some extent, although I agree with you, I think it's a lot less than it was 10 years ago. But there's still some people that admit that if you do anything about this, that's not weeds, diseases, and insects, or it's not farm business management. If you go into any form of leadership program or any form of coaching program or any of that is somehow a sign, that is acknowledgement of weakness rather than strength. And as you and I know, like every successful person has multiple coaches. Like I'm actually going back, and I'm actually going to be interviewing a coach for myself here end of next week. I already have a fitness coach. Like we have, everyone has layers of advisors that they're working on that has, some are related to business, but many people have ones that are not. And so I think that has to become a lot more normalized and talk, but that's a sign of strength, not a sign of a problem. Yeah. But it is a sign of weakness.
Well, and just like I said earlier, if you're in the entrepreneurial world, that's the cool thing. That's like the status quo. If you don't have a coach and you're not part of a program, you're like a nobody entrepreneur, right?
But there's there's some particular things around agriculture and the traditional nature of agriculture and what it is. So this is around unconscious maps, right? Like the perception of what it is, of what farming and what agriculture is and what farming is. And also an identity about how I need to be as a farmer. And one of them is this idea is around work. Another one's around vulnerability. Like we don't talk about those things.
Right.
Like we don't want to start conversations with what I don't know, don't understand, and need to figure out. Like we don't ever want to show up with that level of vulnerability. And in some cases, I think that's been well justified. I think there's a good argument for that. But most people don't understand what coaching truly is, in the sense that like coaching is a very confidential relationship where that individual, like if they're a professional coach, they're not selling you anything. They're not an insurance advisor. They're not here trying to sell you insurance or trying to sell you some sort of a plan for your farm. There's nothing. They have no secondary benefit to them. They are there to coach you, and they have no horse in this race other than your personal success, and they only get paid for that. And that, I think, is experienced as being in agriculture. Everything is, well, there's an opportunity, but it's always sponsored by somebody else, like some multinational. So there's always this kind of hook that, where it's like, oh, there's an expectation or whatever. It's like, it's like, no, I work for you. This hour is yours. And that there's no no, and it's not being reported. You're not collecting your data to do anything. Like it's just, and I think most people find that, which I'm finding, by the way, I've got clients that they just keep signing every year. Like I didn't, mostly coaching is about teaching people how to fish. And so once people get resolved, they're good and they move on. What I'm finding more and more is that I've got clients that are finding value in the continuing. And so they're not meeting bi-weekly, but they're certainly meeting every single month. And it's becoming a big part of what's setting them up for success. The last part of this Grow Thru It initiative is that one-on-one is that, is it possible? So I'm really, and it actually wasn't in the original application, but what I'm actually really interested in is that can Grow Thru It design, test, and deliver an effective, scalable solution to support farmers to change those unconscious beliefs and behaviors that are having them be resistant to learning and growth?
That was my next question. Yeah.
Can we do this at scale? Because I'm very confident about my ability to work with people on the one-on-one, but is there a solution here where we can do this in the multiples and actually have a kind of impact that makes that shift forward? And so I've got some, I've been working on this for quite a while, and I'm hoping that we're part of this is to test and validate. So that's some of the stuff we're doing.
You've answered a few of my questions. I think where I want to jump to right away, you just started going in that direction. I want to say one thing. One of my favorite other sayings, I have a few that are just like classic. If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. I've experienced that as an entrepreneur. And the great thing in the mainstream world, I keep on going there, and I know I always do in our conversations, because we both see out of agriculture and in agriculture. And especially in agriculture, it's so isolating for the most part. And you're working with spouse, children, parents. So you are always dealing with those dynamics, and you kind of get stuck. You always do what you've always done, and you'll always get what you've always got for production, for health, happiness. So where I wanted to go is, why do you think people on the farm get stuck, and why it's so hard to change family patterns? I know you mentioned succession planning. I think farmers, we just spin. People spin, right? If you don't know the answer, you spin, you get stuck. That causes burnout. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not sure my question, but
I got it. No, I'm clear.
Okay.
So, that's a big, so it's a big field.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's actually, like, I've been doing this long enough, Tracy, that there's patterns. Like, everybody thinks it's unique, different, but there's actually a kind of a formula. So I'll start at the beginning. So the first thing I would say is that most people don't see that there is a pattern.
Oh, right. Yes.
They're not aware of it. And they don't actually, and if they do, they don't, this is so common. I mean, I heard this, from, and clients, is that even when they see the pattern or the problem, it's not them, it's out here, it's them, it's the person out there that has to change. And it's not, they're not part of it. And as they come to realize that that they're in this pattern, many will say that, well, they don't believe they have the leverage to change it, even if they see it. And of course, what they don't understand is, like, because many have had no leader development, they don't actually understand that, like, change only ever starts with one person who says, I want to talk about the future now. I want to bring the future into the present, and I want to declare that I want something to be different. Like, I want this future, not the one we have, and I'm willing to tell the truth about where we are right now, which creates a whole lot of transparency. And most time people, there's a whole group of people who don't want to have that, because that's just going to create conflict, and are willing to hold that tension between where they are now and the future that they want, and hold that tension to talk about what might be the first step forward. And that actually this is well understood and studied. Like, there are faculties in entire industries, like in industrial and organizational psychology, which are large around this idea of helping people perform better, think better, and actually help collectively work together to create the change, the future that they want, starting in the present. That's an entire thing. And most farmers look at that and go, what the heck does that have to do with farming? And I'm like, everything.
Yeah.
This whole cycle, like this whole human side, it's actually very well studied. It's very well measured. Like we actually kind of know how it works. I think having had the experience of it, through doing this and bringing this with the National Farm Leadership Program, what I've realized is that often where the sticking point was, like the difficulty, is that there's a bunch of missing abilities, which I would call like competencies. There's actually what I would call meta competencies. So we know the competencies, we actually measure it all the time, like of certain behaviors that we know correlate to personal effectiveness that also correlate to business effectiveness. Mm-hmm. So this is all studied and it's universal. Yeah. What people don't understand is when they try to do those things, which you might go to a peer group, you might go somewhere and go, oh, I got to do these things. And they have a struggle doing it, is that there's often a missing, just like in math. You know, if you can't do math, you find out, oh, I was sick the week that they covered this thing. And now that's why I can't do math, because I'm missing this thing. There are some meta competencies. So it's a competency underneath the competency, which has some skills that if I had these skills, I'd grow, like I'd be able to show up in my nervous system. Literally, my nervous system would show up and react and respond differently under these circumstances that would allow me to step in to do things that I didn't even think I was capable of doing. But now that I'm where I am, I can. And this is always experienced when we get into coaching. This is always experienced as a surprise. Mm. They always go like, I couldn't believe, I didn't think I was the kind of person that could do that. Right. And then they find out it's like, but it turns out I've got a little bit in that me too, like enough that I can be effective. And I would say that for those that do that works extraordinarily well. But there's so many people who are really reluctant to step into that, to go, you know what, like I need to start where I'm at and engage someone. So there is still some reluctance. And when they do go, they actually often, I think, times are engaging with advisors that have been with them for a while, who tend to be accountants. And so oftentimes they're actually, it's like going to your construction guy for your diesel mechanic advice. And it's like, they're tradesmen and they're related. They know your business, but they don't have that subject matter expertise. It's like, or asking your diesel mechanic for your agronomic advice. And so I think they've had a struggle to try to match up. And I think for most people, they have no idea that there's in agriculture, because it's emerging, there's an entire profession that is super interested in you as a person and is not so, and not so interested in your business. But by dealing with the person side, they can make the business, they can actually allow you to grip onto all those things and make yourself one advisor ready and actually far more capable to step in to do all the things that right now so far have been really hard to do and really hard to get implemented on the farm.
Kelly, I find myself sitting here in the same spot, looking out of the corner of my eye, the same scenery, and we're talking about this work, and I'm getting... Anger is like my enthusiasm, passion, let's call it. I'm not angry, passionate.
Yeah, excited. Yeah.
Excited because, and I know I've said this is where I'm coming to the flashback, because this is the work and where my brain always goes. And I know I say this to you every time because I'm having the same light bulb moments. Mm-hmm. This is the work that would make succession planning happen. When I do all these episodes mm-hmm. about succession planning, mm-hmm. you can take all the book knowledge, all the techie stuff, but if you're taking the same, I'm going to be stereotypical, it doesn't matter, put your role in, whoever's listening. If you take the same, let's be non-stereotypical. You take the same daughter that wants to take over the farm and the same parent, nobody gets new skills, new abilities, to handle the same problem. What do? You spin. And then This is the part that makes me mad, because if we had the assistance, this work that you're talking mm-hmm. about, even if we're just the daughter or son and we step away from the farm and say, there's got to be a better way to handle this with mom and dad. I keep on coming up with the same lines, the same knowledge, mm-hmm. the same lack of answers. They're the same person. If we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got. We go get new information. Yep. We raise our competencies, the skills, mm-hmm. the knowledge, something will actually happen. But what I've seen, And I fear in this industry, we show up as the same people and we just we spin out, and we wonder why mental health and transition planning are so stressful. Anyways, that's my
Yeah.
rant.
Yeah. So to the rant, and and I'm hoping I'm not going to pinch um, the advisory industry that's out there that's working hard every single day in service to farmers. But the way I've seen it, and I'm speaking about every advisor who's got up and spoke about their experience in doing transition work,
Yeah.
and I will speak with my own personal family experience having transition and all the private conversations, hallway conversations that I've heard. It usually goes something like this for many. And again, there's a whole spectrum. There's big polarities from no conversations at all to ones that started transition when the child was 12 or 13 or 14, going, if you're interested, here's your path for you. And they started very, very
Right.
early.
Yeah.
Most people will get, well, they need to do something. And so they pick one of their most comfortable, the advisor they're most comfortable with, often an accountant, sometimes a lawyer. And they say, well, we want to do it. And so the first thing they say is, well, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want? So this is foundational, because this goes into the part of personal development. And the first thing is that they'll say they don't know what they want. Well, they'll say what they want, but then it's like, then maybe I want something else. And some, they won't say anything at all. And so what we know is that most people don't realize that there's so much inner conflict, because when they're asked to simply, and this affects their ability to communicate, it speaks their ability to take action. And so most of the foundational work that I'm in, and I started at like, well, I'm just going to teach these people communication skills, and if they communicate better, we'll be at which it sounds makes a lot of sense. Except there are actual personalities out here who, for example, and this is probably the majority of people, it pins over probably more than 50%, who are what we would call them very high pleasing, right? We call it the compliant tendency. So these are people who are conservative, like they don't like to take chances. So you talk about like, if it ain't broke, let's not change it. They're very often prioritize belonging, going along to get along, and passiveness. And so what will happen is they'll get into a program that, their problem, they're very nice people. These are people who go around and solve people's problems. They're very concerning. They're great people. But the way that they perceive the world is that if they speak up and anything conflict arises, they're going to get kicked out of the cave. Their relationship could end.
Neat.
And that is unbelievably unaccepted to their, like, at a level that is way below, not up here, in our front part of our brain, where all of the business planning, financial management, and farm transition and articulate conversations occur from. That's all overridden by a much lower emotional learning that started way when they were younger in their life, that looks at this and goes, this seems unbelievably risky and threatening. And they've somehow learned through experiences much longer going, it is not safe to speak up like that. So they won't. But they'll be in a program about communication, and they'll be one of your best students. They're attentive, they're listening, they're smart. They go along, they do the exercises, and they do great. But then you check in with them 6 months later and go, so how did the conversation go? And the answer is there wasn't one. Because asking a person who is dominated by a pleasing part of their personality, that is mostly who they are and who they would identify as, and asking them to actually initiate a very challenging conversation for asking that part of them who's like, it's basically running, it's literally in their head. And they don't even think it's them. Like, it's the only way they are. That's just who they are. It's the same as like asking a dog to climb a tree and then blaming the dog that you just didn't want it bad enough. It's like, they have to find the part of them that's willing to show up and set a boundary, that's willing to be curious and lean in and be challenging in a way that, with an intent to learn and to understand and to be willing and to realize, and this is a big problem, is that so many people in this, they way overestimate the risk of showing up this way. Like, they think the world is going to end when it's not, and they underestimate the reward, and they certainly underestimate the cost of what happens if nothing changes. But this part of them, if it gets them gripped, and pleasing is just one of many, but I think it registers for a lot of the audience. It can be so strong in some families that they are so adverse, that they're so, like, there is a whole, and there's a bunch, but this adversity to conflict or any notion of talking about anything important is that if it gets too important, that's exactly what happens. Nothing ever of consequence ever gets discussed. And some would acknowledge that they would rather transfer the farm and have the next generation not succeed than ever have a conversation about some behaviors that need to shift or change for this to work.
Wow.
And, wouldn't be the first time I've had a conversation, like, because they don't say it that way, but as a coach, I'm like, the story I'm making in my head is that you would rather never have to talk about this and have it not turn out the way you want than actually have the conversation, like actually have to have the conversations and the part about what's important. And this is just about letting go. These are about, whose responsibilities, whose jobs, how are we going to do the shares, like insurance. It could be just about any of the one of dozens of important conversations that need to happen for this family enterprise to move forward into the future. And they would think that they would rather say nothing and put it all at risk than the feeling of what it feels like to have to step into that.
See, this is the work. And I don't know that I can articulate it strong enough, but for me, I love to be in charge of my life and my future as much as we can. And exactly what you just said, I see that as the biggest risk to somebody's livelihood. You don't want to have the conversation because, oh my God, I'm not even a people pleaser. And sometimes those conversations, and I can have hard conversations and I'm not a people pleaser, but you're stuck. You don't want to rock the boat because it's family. You want to belong. Nobody wants to rock the boat. No conversations are had. And then the farm doesn't get transitioned. Not only is that Gen 2's future livelihood, that's the family. And honestly, it's bigger than each of us. Yep. It's the industry that we belong to, the family farm. And to me, it all boils right down to what you're talking about for most families.
But here's the part that I think is just starting to wake up. And this is the part where the way I coach and the method that I'm using for coaching often, most people don't think that you can give a pleasing person a backbone. They don't think that's possible. Just like you can't take a person who's very judgmental, very opinionated, disagreeable, very autocratic, just not a fun boss, and often the dad, like I would say, the dad gets hung with this a lot, but trust me, it shows up everywhere at differing amounts. Most people believe that they're stuck with this shape that they are. But what they don't realize is that they actually have way more to them. Most people have no idea what their potential is because no one told them that they could be way more than they are right now. This whole idea of what got you here will get you there. No one told them that there's actually now rigorous methodology that through coaching that actually can expand people's personalities. Doesn't mean that they're not at their heart going to be this very pleasing person, very much a rescue. It's very concerned about meeting other people's needs rather than their own. I don't think that's not going to be a big part of their character and who they are, but it's not the only thing they are. And that once they just expand this out, what we realize is that if they can be a little bit boundaried, if they could be, and for some people, it's this idea that, so workaholism is a big problem. Like people work too much and it's like, if they can't find the part of themselves that would be willing to take a holiday and do so guilt-free, for people who are very, very perfection oriented and very much autocratic, things have to be a certain way that they're willing to tolerate a little bit of messy in their life, which is actually necessary if you're going to start delegating and training up other people. The learning is going to be occurring by having several safe to fail experiments where the person who's learning isn't going to knock it out of the park necessarily right away, but that's okay because it's not long-term detrimental. But there's going to be this learning part. It's going to be a little bit messy at the beginning, but they're going to get better over time. For people who can't tolerate that, oftentimes those are the families where people don't learn. There is no, particularly if it has to do with labor coming in. And so what most people don't realize is that they can build that on. And when they do, and they're capable, that's where all of the knowledge, tools, and skills around business planning, financial management, farm transition actually can be taken, learned, and actually implemented. If the personality is not there, this stuff is largely just trivia.
Right.
It's just interesting information that cannot be used. And that's the technology, like that's the shift that happened. So we have to put the personal development in pace with the professional development. And agriculture has been largely blind to this personal growth because, well, it's like, well, you got to figure it out. And we even say to the advisors, like, you're just going to have to figure it out. They'll get there. They'll grow up. They'll get it. And if they don't, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be. And that's nonsense in the 21st century. Bleep. It is absolute nonsense. This. They don't do this for professional golf, football, sports, you name it. It doesn't matter what. Their people are trained and coached up. And what people don't realize is that executive coaching is the business of basically growing adults. Professional thinkers, professional business people and not in the skill part, but in this part, the growth of themselves so that they can handle. Those are the individuals that can go and get in a truck and drive around the square and make a very high dollar decision and be okay with it, even knowing that it might not work out. This is the power where people can make marketing decisions. Like when they talk about people frustrated with marketing, the ones that can actually proceed, do the work, and make a decision, knowing full well that it might not turn out the way they want, but they're okay. The market might go up but they've sold already. That's okay, because we know that we sold at a profit. We know why we did what we did. And I can live with the consequences, whether it works out or not. When we get to that part, the stress just drops. And we actually are fundamentally making smart decisions, as opposed to the opposite, where if I'm just jacked and I'm just going to be impulsively panic selling or not selling, or I'm holding grain, and we see it both ways. Most people talk about having to panic sell. I'd say that there's that there are farmers who are holding grain in the bins because just in case. They'll say just in case. And the price has gone from $8.40, $8.70 a year ago. It's down to $7, whatever, when they finally sold, it was down, below $8. And so when you ask them what that's about, it has nothing to do. There's no rational plan behind that. It's I'm worried that if I sell it, I won't have it to sell or something like that. So.
It's so crazy. And I say the entrepreneurial world, but another example that's coming to me is an athlete. Not only as farmers, beef farmers, whoever, the demands on our body physically and the hours and the requirements out of us physically, but the mental bandwidth that farming takes out of you and the number of things coming at you, I would say athletes have mindset coaches.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs back in the 80s, have mindset coaches. Right?
Yeah. So Tracy, back in the 80s, there was a term called the corporate athlete. Oh. And there's a book written on it that was about coaches. This is even before executive coaching became a big thing, which is sort of started into the 90s. And it was around can we apply what elite athletes were doing for high performance? Is there a crossover? And what we're finding now in the 21st century, there are crossovers all over the place that are trying to apply this for the actual of growing people. And this is the part about helping, because we need people to grow so that they are more adaptable, so they can stay ahead of all the volatility, uncertainty, complexity of what's going on in farming. Because when we don't, we get under, and our body responds by stress. And what we know is that it gets into what we call a negative loop. And the more stressed they are, the less capable they are. Right. And then that blows out at either a physical ailment, people get sick, or they end up depressed. And it's actually not that. I mean, it's not even like a mental illness. It's literally, they get so stressed out, the sleep it just cranks, they're not sleeping. They're moving. As soon as they get stressed, they tend to move less. And farmers are really vulnerable to this, because the amount of farmers who are not physically active, who are sitting all the time, whether they're in a truck or in a piece of machinery. And this whole, you talk about physical fitness, this is a major opportunity. It's been said over and over. I'm not sure what the exact quote is, but physical exercise is still probably one of the most powerful drugs or ways to neurobiologically change your body for the better that there is. And I've had to relearn that lesson in my life a few times, that when I'll give you an example. So I'm 50, I'm going to be turning 57. So I'm 56. I'm starting to have episodes of high blood pressure for reasons I don't understand. I think they probably are stress related, but I'm not sure. So I'd wake up in the morning. It doesn't even seem to matter. I wake up and have high blood pressure, and it seems to go for a couple of weeks. And I'm like, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's not all the other things. Like, maybe it's stress. So one day I got fed up, and I'm sick of this because it's like a headache. I mean, my head's hurting. It just doesn't feel good. So I said, I believe that this is stress related. So I went to town. I got on the treadmill because I couldn't lift weights. I thought my head was going to blow if I had done that. So I just got on the treadmill at a moderate pace, and I walked for an hour. Got off, showered, went to the pharmacy, stuck my arm in the stand or whatever. My blood pressure had dropped completely down into the normal zone.
Really?
Who knows? Like, yeah. I'm sitting there going, like, what does this mean about my life? And sure enough, as things get busier, we move less. Right. And as you get older, there's consequences. And the last one is connection. Like, those are the big three that oftentimes get out of control. And by connection, it's not just family and people who are closest to us that we love the most. Absolutely. But it's also that we have to change. We talk about grow through it. We have to change that when we're stressed, we need to start connecting to people who can help us instead of the opposite. Because I've had this. I was offering free coaching NFLP, and it was like, why didn't you use the coaching? Because they tell you this tremendous story of adversity, and like, why didn't you call? Well, I didn't think it was bad enough. I didn't want to blow my three coaching sessions. So we have to start, reaching, going out. Like, when there's an issue, like if you have a flat tire on your comment, you know that you call somebody.
Yeah.
Right. If your truck flips a code and you can't sort it out, you're going to have to call someone to get the code reset and fix whatever's going on. But when people start having their own check engine light codes flashing, or even standard maintenance of conditioning to keep themselves at peak performance, they somehow think that they're supposed to do it with no one would send their combine to the field without some form of proper servicing and maintenance and monitoring. Like, they'll do a certain amount themselves, but they're also, like, at a certain point, they are putting technicians that are in and evaluating it. And if not, they're checking about about what they can do to improve that piece of machinery. There's a big gap about people who think that's possible for themselves. And the crazy part is that most people don't realize they are the most, and when it comes to that farm, they are the farm. They are the number one and most important asset, because you can flip a combine. If something goes bad, that is expensive, and as painful it might be, that is a replaceable asset. You are not.
You took the word.
I feel like I'm ranting a bit, but
I love it. I love our conversation.
Been around, but most of them have no notion that when they see themselves on a balance sheet, because you don't show up there.
Yeah,
they don't show up. They don't see themselves like they are. And then the whole point is them. And until you have an experience where you find out that life might be a little shorter, it could be a lot shorter than you think. They don't have, and that's the point, is that hopefully we don't need to have those kinds of incidents in our life where it feels like it's all going to go away or all can end suddenly, to be in a path where we need to change and take those necessary steps. So, yeah.
I love this conversation. We could chat for hours. I know we could. We both get so fired up. I shouldn't speak for you, but I get so fired up during our conversations. So we've chatted a lot about personal performance, the things we know, the things we don't, where the big danger lies. We've covered quite a few of the things I wanted to chat about just naturally, because we do. If a farmer is stuck, overwhelmed, exhausted, they're just stuck. They don't even know that they're stuck, or they don't even know what they need. Do you want to just speak to that person on the benefit of coaching, the benefit of getting out of the same stuck patterns? Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So let's just put the whole mental health, like the whole chronic stress, let's just put that aside. But they've tried everything and they can't get out. And maybe they are feeling like it's starting to be, it's draining them down. The first thing I would say to them is that that is a sign that if you haven't been able to work it out sufficiently, that is the sign to actually just signal to grow, which means you need to reach out and figure out and get a second opinion about what to do. Secondly, this idea of being stuck is actually it depends. I mean, it'll be unique to the situation, but generally speaking, what most people feel is stuck is an internal. And wait for it. So I don't want to get too geeky on you, but stuckness is an internal conflict between two parts of ourselves, mostly that we're not really aware of, who in us is pulling all our levers. That has an unconscious map of reality. It says the world is like this, and this is how I need to be in it. And we're in this situation that we haven't quite been in before. And part of me says I should do something, and part of me says I shouldn't. A part of me says go, part of me says stop. A part of me says speak up and put my foot down. A part of me says don't go there. And they are toggling between two very parts of themselves that are giving opposite messages about what to do. This would be seen that we should pick between one versus the other. Maybe that's true. But what coaching is about and what we talk about is that there's no bad. The part of me that just says I should or I shouldn't. These are not bad. Like, one is not good and one is not bad, or necessarily right or wrong. Because if they're two, one or the other, chances are they're both not going to probably get where you are. What I spent all our time is to realize is to get as many perspectives of ourselves and that are authentic to them. So this is, I just want to say, this is vastly different than the sort of the just do it, keep doing it approach, which has been really this 4-decade cognitive behavioral experiment that agriculture's been doing, which is, if you want to be successful, you need to think like this, you need to do these things, and if you do that, you'll get these results, and then you'll be happy. What we know about that is that, and for some, they're trying and it's not working. What we know about that is that it does work. About 25% of farmers, and there's been multi-duplicated studies about this whole problem. And guess what? 25% of farmers are running best management practices on their farm, and they're doing quite well. And then there's this degradation of everybody else. This degradation of everybody else, and they're not being able to do it. This is where we result into things like we can't get stuck, we can't pull the trigger, we can't make decisions, we can't talk about the things that we need to do. And so what we know, and that people are like, and they've tried it, and they've tried the recommendations of the advisor, or they go to a peer group, just do it, and they're like, I do it, but I can't. I try it, and then I stop. I can't put my foot down. Like, I know I should, but I can't. Yeah. And so they say, well, then they really are stuck, because then they feel like I know what I should do, and I can't do it. Some get to the point where like it's not even about should I or shouldn't I. It's I know I should, but oh my goodness, like it's asking me to be someone that I don't think I am, and that also can be grown and developed. And the coaching is about realizing that you're way more than you think you are, and you know way more about what to do than you realize. And that we're actually able, through coaching now, we're able to expand people out so they actually can know their minds in it's a very rigorous methodology, that they can actually know their minds. And for some they'll come in and have a very negative inner dialogue. Like, because this part's beaking at them, going like, you're not good enough, you need better. And most of them, I'll ask, like, do you have voices in your head? And they're like, they kind of always get a little, I'm like, they're like, and I'm like, not like that. I mean, do you have, right? Are you hard on yourself? Do you have people now? And you're like, oh. And then they're like, yeah. And so the first person I ever asked, like, what's it like inside of you? What's it like currently being you? And so what we know is that most people spend all their time turning away from that negative voice, pushing and suppressing it. And again, that takes a ton of energy, as you well know. We actually tell them, going, this is important. This is actually a path to actually a solution. How about we train them, turn towards that part of you and say, hi, you have my full attention. Who are you speaking for? Who and me are you, like, and then they're like, what? And then to teach them to have an inner conversation with themselves. And we do this as a coaching, going, what is it that you want me to do? Why do you want me to do it? What are you afraid would happen if I don't do? This is like they're talking with themselves, with the part of them that says, what are you afraid will happen if I don't do it? And that interview can get longer. And when they do that, you're like, awesome, thanks so much. What about the person who says, something else? And finally, what will happen is that they'll find there's a third way. which is where when I'm going, you know what, I've actually thought about this in a bunch of different ways. And actually it's not any of those. It's actually, what if we do this? What if I do this? And all of a sudden they get this overwhelming sense of like, man, that makes a lot of sense. And before they know it, they go out and without any communication training, whatever, they find the right time, the right place, because they've struck something that feels authentic and clear to them. And because now they have the right intent, and they go out and they're effective. And they didn't think they could. And at that point, what they experience is that their life changes. Like, because what happens next has never happened before. And suddenly they're like, I'm never going back to that. I've got this. And they see this as like, God, if I could do that here, I could do that over there. And then and as you know, it's once people feel this sense of, because it feels really good.
Yeah.
Like once they find it, I mean, they feel calmer, they're clear, they're connected. They're more creative because they can think about things differently. They don't locked into a certain way of thinking, and it's completely authentic to them. They're not pasting on what someone else says about how they should be. It works if it fits you, but if it doesn't, it never feels right. And that this is available now to pretty much anybody who wants it. And that is going to relieve a ton, and it's going to make all of this learning of all this farm business management practices far more accessible than to 25%.
I love it for so many reasons: personal, the farm performance, our relationships, transition. The other one I find with farming, and then get your thoughts on this and we can wrap up. I find our decisions as farmers are so big. You're selling your commodity X many times a year, right? Not many. So you can make big bad decisions or big good, depending the time you sell. And I almost wonder if in agriculture, there's an extra layer, because it's not an everyday, like your income out. It's a very much, we sold, it was the wrong day for cattle. We just did that. We ended up, it was good, but it was coming down. We sold on our typical day where we do well. We didn't do well because a tweet went out, it crashed the market, and now it's back up. I often wonder, I'm going to use the word I don't often use, the resilience. We have those big, bad moments. And I almost wonder if we can't work through them, that stress and those mistakes are so big sometimes. And not always in our control, but they become mentally stackable. And then just almost becomes weight for farmers. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, just because it's so big, the decisions we make. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So Tracy, I think what you're pointing to, and you tell me if I have this right, I think what you're pointing to is how can farmers basically learn from negative, like from failures
Move
and
through,
big ones, and to not be afraid to make the next one.
Yes.
So that's probably an entire episode unto itself. Just so you know, in short, I'll have two thoughts that immediately come to mind. Yeah. So first of all, the first one is, and by the way, this is actually a major block to growth, is that there is a very taboo notion about talking about learning and failure. There is a lot about, like, we don't want to talk about our failure. We don't want to talk about what didn't work.
Right.
And so the interesting data on this is that most people understand is that actually learning from all learning should occur and generally occurs from not getting what we want.
Right.
So two things. The first one is there's a methodology to that. So first of all, in the making of the decision, when someone makes a decision, if it's done from what we call very problem oriented, where it's done out of impulse or very active or very emotional, that actually leads to poor decisions. But if I can do it as a from what we would call inner leader, so that I know, so I've gone through and I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I know, like, this price point makes sense because I know that we need this much. And so I've taken all of the stinking thinking out of it in terms of, like, I need to do it, but not, no, I know I need this much. I'm going to sell this much. There's a rational reason why we're going to do it today. And that this is the point we're going to do it. Even if it doesn't work out, or it turns out there's a better decision or a better price later, I'm okay with it because I know why I took this risk. I did what I did. This is what we call, so this is what we've had this a lot. People say, well, I need to be confident. All I want to do is be confident. And I'm going, you know what? I'm with you.
Yeah.
But you chose farming. You chose to work in a complex domain.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means that the cause and effect is not even immediately known. You don't even know if it's going to be the right call.
Yeah.
You're not sure what the right thing to do is. So how do we make forward in that? So that's a whole study. But bottom line is, you got to know the why. So mostly what we say is you need to do the work, and then it's about courage, which in other words, and you need to know why you're doing what you're doing. And those are the rails for which you decide to move forward. In service to this is why I make this decision. And when people actually go through that process, depending what we're talking about, again, it creates a completely different shift. You're not operating out of impulse or reactivity. You're operating out of a sense of, no, and it's not just like accountants say, it's all about rational. It's all about taking the rational, which is true. There's a big part of rational. But sometimes rational doesn't actually have the answers to some of these questions, which can be very relational. It can be there isn't a right or wrong. What happens if the numbers, or it seems like it's about a 50-50? Then you have to go to something deep, and you got to do something else. So there's that. The second thing is when it doesn't work out, and we teach this as something that's called. It has a whole $25 term for it, but basically it's what we call experiential learning, which is where you do something, and you can use this with a success or a failure. We use it actually for kids, like I use it for a lot for young employees. Somebody does something awesome, so you bring like, hey, look, let's just talk about this. Lane did this thing, right? And it worked out, and it did this. And it's like, isn't that cool? And do you know why? And by the way, do you know why that worked so well? Does anybody know? And it's like, because, and there'll be a best practice around, this is why, because, she did all the right things, whether she knew it or not. She did all the right things. So going forward, next time, let's all do more of this. And this creates a culture of learning. Oh, good. It also works for when they dump a $12,000 welderator off the forks of a tractor and smashes it to bits. And it's valueless to go, okay, we're not going to talk. So let's talk about what that had. And then you find out, yeah, what works for one person doesn't work for another. What are we going to do? I think we're going to hold up on a chain, and we're going to be able to move. The welderator is moved this way, not that way. Because that way you need like 25 years of Jedi front-end loader skills. This one can be done by anybody, even a person who's learning.
Nice.
So next time, so we have the chain. So how do we move the welder? We're going to do this. Learning has occurred.
Yeah.
And when people get good at doing that, of experiencing that not getting what you want actually has an enormous amount of value, changes everything. To the point, when they get through that, and this is where we want, and it goes to this final step, the gold standard of this is that farmers, people show up and they lead every conversation and engagement, no matter who it's with what I don't know, don't understand, and want to figure out. I want to start with that, and I have to be able to willing to share that, like be transparent. I'm going, this part I've never been very comfortable with. I'm not sure how this works. Do you have time to explain this to me? And then it's like, I don't quite understand that. And this works a lot. We're like, particularly in transition conversations, taxation, like what maybe there's a term that you don't even understand. Like, why does that matter? And to slow down, I mean, the best accountants are very good at this, but some get going and they're like, why is that a thing? Pump the brakes a second. Explain that to me. And if they're able to do that and be vulnerable, that they don't, as opposed to just sitting there going like, just waiting, hoping the timeout to sign. These are things that can be learned. They can be learned, but we got to build out the person to get there first. Like we have to build the person up, and then they're able to show up and do the things they need to do.
Oh, I love it. I think you just hit the nail on the head. I was going to say life, business, and farming, such a mind game, but I love what you said even better. We're building the person. We're building the person.
Yep. Let's grow through it. Like you grow through it. Ooh. It's not something that keeps you down. It's an invitation for growth. Perfect. There's different types of this. Like, have you ever heard of the concept of anti-fragile?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love it, right? So for people who don't know it, it's by a guy. He used it in different ways, but the guy who talked is called Nicholas Taleb. But anyways, his opening description of anti-fragile was, imagine a FedEx package falling off the FedEx truck, skidding across the road at like 60 miles an hour. It's getting, and as it was getting scuffed and tipped and being run over, the box actually got stronger. To the point when you went over and picked it up, it's like the thing weighs about 25 pounds and it's about 4 inches. Like it's now like it started this big, but now it's this big and it's softer and more pliable. And it's like it actually grew stronger as a result of what it went through.
Oh,
imagine if people were like that.
Nice.
That all of this is an invitation, and that you can, and we can, because our bodies are designed. Like we are the most adaptable organism on earth. Like we are, and it's this joy of neuroplasticity. Like and the thing is, we can leverage this all our whole life.
I love
And
it.
so really the whole game is really just leveraging our neuroplastic potential. And it works for personality, it works for learning. And that's the thing that's going to underpin all this farm success. That's the major, when they talk about a key performance indicator on farms, the one KPI when the coaching side is, to what extent is this person, leveraging their neuroplastic potential? What is their learning rate, growth rate? Are they capable of, given who they are in their stage in life? Because the older you are, the less you have. Are they maxing that out? Because if that's what puts them on this fast curve. So
Grow through it. That should be like a sign on my office wall. On that note, do you want to tell us how farmers can connect with you? Also, do you want to talk about Grow Through It and how people can find out more info?
yeah, so I would say just be waiting for it. We're just in the early stages.
Okay.
So to contact me directly, you can simply go to my website, Kelly or leader-shift.ca. You can email me directly at kelly@leader-shift.ca. If you go to the website, you'll see we've got some programs coming up in the new year. Our Grow Through It 1, which is our Insight program, and our Grow Through It 2, which is our Insider program, which is our new program we're rolling out that's part of this whole Grow Through It. So giving people a real understanding of basic, family and human systems and how this all works, and understanding like you can demystify it. And then a deeper dive, which is getting into this part about like understanding like why certain people bug me and what I can do with myself so that I'm less irritated by others. Building out myself, and that there's a methodology you can do it that works for many, many people. And so, just excited to see how that goes. The one program is already like, by the way, Farm Credit Canada has been a great partner in this. They've had 20 discounted spots that they're giving an 80% coupon discount. The Insight program is fully subscribed, but the program is very affordable. It's well under $1,000. I think it's like $600 or something. And so we can take more registrations for that, and there might be a few discount coupons for the Insider program, which would probably be better fit for people who've taken Insight. But definitely in the way they're stacked, you can take one and then the other after it. So so if anybody's interested, happy to connect.
Perfect. And I'll put links to your website in the show notes on Farm Marketer, Impact Farming. Find this episode and they can connect with you if they have any questions. Kelly, I love our conversations. I always find sometimes like they're so valuable because I love this stuff. I know it's the magic sauce, and I love how you left that, growing the person. And there's just so many ways and so many things we could talk about that I would love to have 5 hours with you. You need a YouTube channel, by the way, where they can get little snippets of Kelly. Do you have that?
You know what we should do? We should maybe I need to buy some coaching, Tracy, and tell me how I should do it, because there is people who are like doing more. But I'll be honest with you, I've been really reluctant to say these things because this was not popular or cool to say 10 years ago. And I couldn't put it into words, but it's starting to become more acceptable. Like it is to the point, and I know your time is wrapping up, but people like long-standing like advisors who've been in the business for decades are openly saying publicly now, it's like, this is, these are the things we need to do for a farm to be successful under those like business planning, financial management, farm transition, but only 25% are doing it. And the answer is they don't know why. They don't know why people aren't picking it up. And I'm like, because to get to the next level, there's this personal growth that has to happen.
Yeah. Because
there's a bunch of reasons why they don't want to step into it. And the thing is that for every individual, they can find out what it is. And I think the success rate today is they can easily grow through it and step into the next thing to take their farm to the next level. So.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, I will put links to your website, and maybe by next time we talk, you'll have a YouTube channel. No pressure.
Gotcha.
Kelly, this has been amazing. And you guys in the audience, if you enjoyed this as much as I did, like it, share it, get it out there. Kelly, thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You are so welcome.
Okay.
And you guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.